It's not a choppy at all for me. Thank you. It's okay.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yep. So I'm recording this meeting so we could have a copy of the conversation. Okay.
Yes. So today, to begin with vocabulary tests as usual.
Yeah.
Please test me.
Okay, wait up. Right. Number 1.
Oh, yes.
Decisive.
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 Decisive. Decisive. Okay. First of all, I write down.
Decisive. What does it mean?
Indecisive, you mean? What decisive?
Decisive.
Oh, like you. Firm resolution well. The person with firm, and the opposite meaning is indecisive.
Yes, correct.
Like me in my life.
I don't think so.
Or chicken, something like that.
Something like that, yeah. All right, next. Imminent. Imminent.
Imminent. Oh, E-M-I-N-E-N-T.
I-M-M-I.
Sorry, I-M-M-I.
N-E-N-T.
Urgent.
Yes. Correct. Number 3.
Yes.
Heedless. Heedless.
H-E-E-D-L-E-S-S.
Correct.
Heedless. Fear.
All right, correct. Next, number 4, yield. Yield.
Y-I-E-L-D.
Correct.
Yield means subsequent, submissive.
All right.
Or concede, something like that.
Correct.
But as a verb, produce, something like that. Produce.
Yes, it could be like to harvest, to produce. You can use the word yield.
Yield control in economics.
Yes.
Control of interest.
Yes. So wait, 1, 2, 4. Number 5.
Yes.
Gust. Gust.
G-H-A-S-T.
No, not a gust. Gust. Gust of wind.
G-H-A-S-T. No.
No.
No. How do you spell it?
G-U-S-T.
G-U-E?
G-U-S-T.
Gust.
Yes.
Gust of wind.
Yes. What does it mean?
Strong, sudden, strong.
Yes, correct.
Something.
Next, number 6. Abrupt.
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 Abrupt. He caught her arm, bringing her to an abrupt halt.
My manner is abruptly. Sometimes to you or something like that. Abrupt.
Okay. What does it mean?
Abrupt. Abrupt coming. Abrupt. Calling.
Correct.
Awkward. Sudden. Well, the sudden happening,
Yes.
attitude, behavior.
Yes, correct. Abrupt. Next, what number are we now?
7.
7. Discernible. Discernible.
Discernible.
Very discernible in the gloom. Discernible.
Discernible. Discernible. Discernible. Wait up. Discernible. Distinguishing.
Very good. Number 8. Lavish. Lavish. Her family is quite rich, so she was able to have a lavish wedding. Lavish.
Gorgeous, wasteful.
Correct.
So how do you spell it?
Lavish. Lavish.
Lavish. Rubbish.
Yes. Yes. Next, number 9. Linger. Linger.
Linger.
We cannot linger over the details of this plan. Linger.
Don't be so late.
Correct.
For example, when we take an airplane, probably air cabin or aircraft pilot sometimes tell, "Oh, now it's cloudy, ding-a-ling, cloudy."
Yes.
Right?
Yes, correct. Last one, number 10. Composure. He regained his composure, leveled his eyes on the girl, and said, "You can go now." Composure.
Attitude.
Yes.
Quiet behavior. No, not enough.
Correct. Behavior. Correct. Okay. So, wait up. I'll just hold this.
Hold on, please.
I'm sorry.
Hold on, please.
Okay.
Now, so let's begin.
All right. So we're now in chapter 2.
Yes.
So I would like to continue. It's in page 28.
Oh, I don't have page number.
It's chapter 2. So we finished chapter 1. So on the page there's like 2. Like
yes, I know. But what page?
Can you see this? Can you see my screen?
Oh yes.
Yeah, it has this sign.
Yes.
So it's chapter 2.
From the beginning?
Yeah, from the beginning.
Oh, I see. So let me read first.
Oh, sure.
Okay. Not until it was twilight did Gregor awake out of a deep sleep, more like a swan than asleep. He would certainly have waked up of his own accord not much later, for he felt himself sufficiently rested and well slept, but it seemed to him as if a fretting step and a cautious shutting of the door leading into the hall had aroused him. The electric light in the street cast a pale sheen here and there on the ceiling and the upper surfaces of the furniture, but down below, where he lay, it was dark. Slowly, awkwardly, trying out his feelers, which he now first learned to appreciate, he pushed his way to the door to see what had been happening there. His left side felt like on seeing long, unpleasantly tense scar, and he had actually to limp on his 2 rows of legs. One little leg, moreover, had been severely damaged in the course of that morning event. It was almost a miracle that only one had been damaged and trailed uselessly behind him. Here, trying out, slowly, awkwardly trying out his feelers. Feelers means some tissues for feeling.
Yes.
So in concrete here, foot and palm, something like that.
Yes. Yeah. So I think in the first paragraph, he was trying to. It mentioned here that he wasn't able to sleep very well. Right? So he awoke out of a deep sleep, but it wasn't really a deep sleep. It's more like a swoon. Swoon means like very faint sleep. So he's trying to move himself around, right? So my turn. He had reached the door before he discovered what had really drawn him to it, the smell of food. For there stood a basin filled with fresh milk in which floated little sops of white bread. He could almost have laughed with joy, since he was now still hungrier than in the morning, and he dipped his head almost over the ice straight into the milk. But soon in disappointment, he withdrew it again. Not only did he find it difficult to feed because of his tender left side, and he could only feed with a palpitating collaboration of his whole body. He did not like the milk either. Although milk had been his favorite drink, that was certainly why his sister had set it there for him. Indeed, it was almost with repulsion that he turned away from the basin and crawled back to the middle of the room. What do you think happened?
His tender left. Here, palpitating. What does it mean?
Palpitate, like to pulse. Wait.
Pulse.
Yeah, like palpitate is the action that your heart or your blood vessels does beat.
Shivering.
Yeah.
Palpitating in collaboration with his whole body. That he turned away from basin problem. He, as usually, I presume that he used to drink and eat bread and drink milk when he was a human being, but now he turned to the insect. He doesn't like eating and drinking.
Yeah. He is repulsed from the milk. It is his favorite. Right? It was his favorite drink, but why did he not like it now?
So his taste have changed differently.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. So my turn.
Yes.
He could see through the crack of the door that that the gas was turned on in the living room. But while usually at this time his father made a habit of reading the afternoon newspaper in a loud voice to his mother and occasionally to his sister as well. Not a sound was now to be heard. Well, perhaps his father had recently given up this habit of reading aloud, which his sister had mentioned so often in conversation and in her letters. But there was the same silence all around, although the flat was certainly not empty of occupant. What a quiet life our family has been leading, said Gregor to himself, and he sat there, motionless, staring into the darkness. He felt great pride in the fact that he had been able to provide such a life for his parent and sister in such a fine flat. But what if all the quiet, the comfort, the contentment were now to end in horror? To keep himself from beginning lost in such thought, Gregor took refuge in movement and crawled up and down the room. What about this? So not only his taste had changed, but also her family atmosphere has changed quite absolutely.
Yeah, because of the change. So once during the long evening, one of the side doors was opened a little and quickly shut again. Later, the other side door too. Someone had apparently wanted to come in and then thought better of it. Gregor now stationed himself immediately before the living room door, determined to persuade any hesitating visitor to come in or at least to discover who it might be. But the door was not opened again, and he waited in vain. In the early morning, when the doors were locked, they had all wanted to come in. Now that he had opened one door and the other had apparently been opened during the day, no one came in, and even the keys were on the other side of the doors.
Okay. So, his family and members and Gregor are forced to keep distance. It was late at night before the gas went out in the living room, and Gregor could easily tell that his parents and his sister had all stayed awake until then, for he could clearly hear the three of them stealing away on tiptoe. No one was likely to visit him, not until the morning, that was certain, so he had plenty of time to meditate at his leisure on how he was to arrange his life afresh. But the lofty, empty room in which he had to lie flat on the floor filled him with an apprehension he could not account for, since it hadn't been very own room for the past 5 years, and with a half unconscious action, not without a slight feeling of shame, he scuttled under the sofa, where he felt comfortable at once, although his hack was a little cramped, and he could not lift his head up, and his only regret was that his body was too broad to get the whole of it under the sofa. He stayed there all night, spending the time partly in a light slumber, from which his hunger kept waking him up with a start, and partly in worrying and sketching vague hopes, which all led to the same conclusion, that he must lie low for the present, and by exercising patience and at most consideration, help the family to bear the inconvenience he was bound to cause them in his present condition. Oh, here, although he's a hack, what does it mean? Hack, H-A-C-K.
H-A-C-K, hack is like, wait up. Hack. Oh, okay. So it could be used. I usually use this like, it's a shortcut, it's a system, something like that.
System.
Like, wait up. So it's like a shortcut. I think shortcut is the best definition for a hack. Do you know what a shortcut is? It's like an easy way to do things.
Do things?
Do things. An easy way to do things.
But
so he said.
But hack means cut with axe. Hack means.
Hack can be used in different meanings. It could be used as a verb, like cut, or it could also be used like to gain access, gain entry, to enter. You could also use that as a verb that way. So you could cut or to enter. You can use the word hack. It could also be used as a noun, like, to refer to the cut, to the wound, or like the shortcut. That's a
shortcut.
Yeah. Like, yeah.
So here, although his hack was a little cramped. So he made his way shortly. Rephrasing.
So he went under the sofa, right? It's a hack because he felt comfortable.
I see.
Right?
Okay.
Okay, I have a question for you. Why do you think did he feel comfortable when he was under the sofa?
Because family members are not able to find him easily if he conceals himself under the sofa, and maybe he doesn't like light. He's the insect.
Correct. I think that's the best answer. He doesn't like the light because he's an insect.
I see. So please, your turn. Very early.
All right. So he stayed there all night, spending the time partly in a light slumber, from which his hunger kept waking him up with a start, and partly worrying and sketching vague hopes, which all led to the same conclusion, that he must lie low for the present, and by exercising patience and the utmost consideration, help the family to bear the inconvenience he was bound to cause them in his present condition.
I read here. Okay. So, sketching vague hopes. Very early in the morning, it was still almost night. Gregor had the chance to test the strength of his new resolutions for his sister. Nearly fully dressed, opened the door from the hall and peered in. She did not see him at once, yet when she caught sight of him under the sofa, well, he had to be somewhere. He couldn't have flown away, could he? She was so startled that, without being able to help it, she slammed the door shut again. But as if regretting her behavior, she opened the door again immediately and came in on tiptoe, as if she were visiting an invalid or even a stranger. Gregor had pushed his head forward to the very edge of the sofa, watched her. Would she notice that he had left the milk standing and not for lack of hunger, and would she bring in some other kind of food more to his taste? If she did not do it of her own accord, he would rather starve than draw her attention to the fact. Although he felt a wild impulse to dart out from under the sofa, throw himself at her feet and beg her for something to eat, but his sister at once noticed, with surprise, that the basin was still full, except for a little, little milk that had been spilled all around it. She lifted immediately, not with her bare hand, true, but with a cloth, and carried it away. Gregor was widely curious to know what she would bring instead, and made various speculations about it. Yet, what she actually did next, in the goodness of her heart, he could never have guessed at. To find out what he liked, she brought him a whole selection of food, all set out on old newspaper. There were old, half-decayed vegetables, bones from the last night's supper, covered with a white sauce that had thickened, some raisins and almond, a piece of cheese that Gregor would have called uneatable 2 days ago, a dry roll of bread, a buttered roll, and a roll both buttered and salted. Beside all that, she set down again the same basin, into which she had poured some water, and which was apparently to reserve for his exclusive use, and with fine tact, knowing that Gregor would not eat in her presence, she would withdraw quickly and even turn the key, to let him understand that he could take his ease as much as he liked. Or here, from here, please read. I'm tired.
Okay, what happened now?
Gregor legs. Please read.
Okay. Gregor, is it here? Gregor was wildly curious to know.
No. Gregor legs all with the toward
right.
flood.
Okay, Gregor's legs all whizzed towards the food. His wounds must have healed completely. Moreover, for he felt no disability, which amazed him and made him reflect how more than a month ago he had cut one finger a little with a knife and had still suffered pain from the wound only the day before yesterday. Am I less sensitive now? He thought, and sucked greedily at the cheese, which above all the other edibles attracted him at once and strongly. One after another, and with the tears of satisfaction in his eyes, he quickly devoured the cheese, the vegetables, and the sauce. The fresh food, on the other hand, had no charms for him. He could not even stand the smell of it, and actually dragged away to some little distance the things he could eat. He had long finished his meal, and was only lying lazily on the same spot, when his sister turned the key slowly as a sign for him to retreat. That roused him at once, although he was nearly asleep, and he hurried under the sofa again. But it took considerable self-control for him to stay under the sofa. Even for the short time his sister was in the room, since the large meal had swollen his body somewhat, and he was so cramped he could hardly breathe. Slight attacks of breathlessness afflicted him, and his eyes were staring a little out of his head as he watched his unsuspecting sister sweeping together with a broom not only the remains of what he had eaten, but even the things he had not touched, as if these were now of no use to anyone, and hastily shoveling it all into a bucket, which she covered with a wooden lid and carried away. Hardly had she turned her back when Gregor came from under the sofa and stretched and puffed himself out.
As here, he ate cheese, vegetable, and the sauce, the fresh food.
Right. What are his choices now? What does he like now?
And he preferred those foods rather than milk and bread.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say they are best for him,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Okay. In this summer, Gregor was fed once in the early morning while his parents and the servant girl were still asleep, and the second time after they had all had their midday dinner.
Mm-hmm.
For then his parents took a short nap and the servant girl could be sent out on some errand or other by his sister. Not, not that they would have wanted him to starve, of course, but perhaps they could not have borne to know more about his feelings than from hearsay. Hearsay means rumor.
Mm-hmm. Hearsay. Hearsay is
Hearsay,
rumor.
almost
Yes.
saying rumor.
Yes. They're similar.
Uh-huh.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Perhaps to his sister wanted to spare them such little anxieties whatever possible, since they had quite enough to bear as it was. Okay, here I would like to ask you in Philippines, this in this country in those days, they are not so. This family was not so rich, but they could afford to hire a servant girl, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe at cheaper price, cost wages, and okay. In your country, do the middle class families almost of them can afford to hire a servant?
Okay, so that's a controversial question actually. So my family is middle class. My
Uh-huh.
family is considered middle class, but I remember when I was in elementary and high school, we
Mm-hmm.
had some sort of a servant at home. It's very common in the Philippines to have
Uh,
some form of a helper
uh,
because it's very cheap. Labor is very cheap in my country. So
uh,
I think like we only paid some helper who would stay at our house. So like we had a helper when I was younger, and I remember they would always sleep at our house. We call them like stay in helper because they stay in the house.
uh,
So we also give them food. We give them meals.
yes.
Uh, but their salary is very low. It's like 4,000 or 5,000 yen a month.
Oh, equivalent to Japanese yen
Yeah.
or Philippine peso.
Yeah, it's like 2,500 pesos.
Wow. But
Very, very cheap.
and you can sack dismiss her easily
Yeah,
without
because
without
it's not a
notice.
formal because it's not a formal contract. There's no contract.
Oh, I
Yeah,
see.
a helper is very common in the Philippines. You like I think even when I studied in a public school, I
Oh,
think all of my classmates had a helper. At,
oh,
yeah, yeah.
how old generally how old are they? They are young or young
Usually,
old
okay.
age?
Usually we get helpers from a far relative. For example, usually the helpers that we hired were
Mhm.
my mom or my dad's cousin's cousin, like a
Oh,
very far relative who are very poor.
oh, I see. I
Yeah,
see.
we get them usually from the poor provinces. So
Uh-huh.
that's how we get helpers. So it's a relative, a cousin
I
of a
see.
cousin,
I
and they
see.
are poor.
But
Yeah.
sometimes there a problem that those helpers uh, thief money.
Yeah, usually they always. That's
Uh,
usually how
uh,
we fire helpers when we find out that they steal money.
so but you know all this risk, but you have to accept those risks.
Yeah, in our houses, I think my parents do not keep a lot of money. We don't have a lot of valuables, so
Mhm.
that's why it's okay for my parents to have a helper at home because there's really nothing valuable at home. Even if money, they don't leave a lot of money. Most
Oh,
of the money is in the bank. If
uh-huh.
money, but usually we don't have a lot of money,
I
so
see.
no
I
money to
see.
start with.
So,
And then there are no jewelry. I don't remember my mom wearing expensive
yeah.
jewelry. I think the only jewelry she has is her wedding ring. That's all.
But sometimes your mom gives her money to get shopping, to get food or something like that, and she might take change. Sometimes she take steal a change into her pocket.
Yeah, that
Uh,
happens too.
but in that case, for example, generally Philippine family household
Mm,
people ignore them. Oh, it's okay. I know she
yeah,
steals small money, but
yeah,
we need her,
yeah.
and that loss is uh, less than the value. So
Yes.
just forget it. Something like
Yeah,
that. Oh,
yeah.
I see. I see. Oh,
That's the
so
case for my mom.
I see. Oh, that's the good point for me to live in Philippines. It's very cheap and clean up and buying food and
Mhm,
it's very convenient and do dishes. Yeah, very comfortable in that case.
mhm. Yeah,
Mhm.
I agree. I agree. It's very
Oh,
comfortable.
but on the contrary, here
Mm,
Japan, you cannot afford to those helpers here.
mhm.
It's so
Expensive.
expensive, but if you pay a lot of money, nobody want to be helpers anymore here
That's
in
true.
Japan. But if we got older and sick, we can hire helpers, yeah, from the government, adding money,
Uh-huh.
subsidizing to the helpers.
Ah, I see.
They got the qualification to help us change the uh, diapers in the families.
Mhm.
If we pay money and cooking
Mm.
dishes, in that case. Mhm. Yeah.
Okay.
But in that case, you have a long way to go, so you can save a lot of money if
Yeah.
if you are uh, getting older, even if you
Mhm.
getting weak and even in dementia. Yeah, no problem. Mhm. Oh, okay. So next, your turn.
Okay, yeah, my turn.
Under
So,
what?
under what pretext the doctor and the locksmith had been got rid of on that first morning, Gregory could not discover. For since what he said was not understood by the others, it never struck any of them, not even his sister, that he could understand what they said. And so whenever his sister came into his room, he had to content himself with hearing her utter only a sigh, now and then, and an occasional appeal to the saints. Later on, when she got a little used to the situation, of course, she could never get completely used to it. She sometimes threw out a remark which was kindly meant or could be so interpreted. Well, he liked his dinner today, she would say, when Gregor had made a good clearance of his food. And when he had not eaten, which gradually happened more and more often, she would say almost sadly, everything's been left standing again.
Mhm. But although Gregor could get no news directly, he overheard a lot of from the neighboring rooms, and as soon as voices were audible, he would run to the door of the room concerned and press his whole body against it. In the first few days, especially, there was no conversation that didn't refer to him somehow, even if only indirectly. For 4 days, there were finally consultations at very meal time about what should be done, but also between meals, the same subject was discussed. for there were always at least 2 members of the family at home. Since no one wanted to be alone in the flat and to leave it quite empty was unthinkable. And on the very first of these days, the household cook, it was not quite clear what and how much she knew of this situation, went down on her knees to his mother and begged leave to go. And when she departed, a quarter of an hour later, gave thanks for her dismissal with tears in her eyes as he for the greatest benefit that could have been conferred on her, and without any promoting swore solemn oath that she would never say a single word to anyone about what had happened. Or in this family, just she is affectionate to him, and she try understand Gregor's situation seriously. Is that right?
Yes, correct.
So please read, and let's finish up what you have done.
Yeah. Now, Gregor's sister had to cook too, helping her mother. True, the cooking did not amount to much, for they ate scarcely anything. Gregor was always hearing one of the family vainly urging another to eat and getting no answer but, "Thanks, I've had all I want," or something similar. Perhaps they drank nothing either. Time and again his sister kept asking his father if he wouldn't like some beer and offered kindly to go and fetch it herself, and when he made no answer, suggested that she could ask the concierge to fetch it so that he need feel no sense of obligation. But then a round no came from his father, and no more was said about it.
Here, ability. Now we're just start to how to cook the heaven. To eat and again. After the direct nothing at the time of the if you
What do you think happened to the family after Gregor's transformation?
Yes, his father a kind has an empty heart, and he lost his calmness in a way. And her sister is objective. She takes care of her father and mother, and her brother. So she plays a role of liaison. Connection. She has tried to have a connection between her the other family members and the brother.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes. Right. But Gregor notices that after the transformation, his family becomes very like gloom, right? Here, gloomy. The family became very gloomy.
Gloomy.
Yeah.
Gloomy. Gloomy.
Yeah. Yes. So his family became very gloomy afterwards. So they lost interest, right? And even his sister, even if his sister is trying, right?
Yes.
Okay. The next one is kind of long. Do you want me to read the next paragraph?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Next, February 10th. Okay, from 3 times.
From 3.
3 p.m. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I'll start now.
Mm-hmm.
In the course of that very first day, Gregor's father explained the family's financial position and prospects to both his mother and his sister. Now and then he rose from the table to get some voucher or memorandum out of the small safe he had rescued from the collapse of his business 5 years earlier. One could hear him opening the complicated lock and rustling papers out and shutting it again. This statement made by his father was the first cheerful information Gregor had heard since his imprisonment. He had been of the opinion that nothing at all was left over from his father's business. At least his father had never said anything to the contrary, and of course he had not asked him directly. At that time, Gregor's sole desire was to do his utmost to help the family to forget as soon as possible the catastrophe which had overwhelmed the business and thrown them all into a state of complete despair. And so he had set to work with unusual ardor and almost overnight had become a commercial traveler instead of a little clerk, with of course much greater chances of earning money, and his success was immediately translated into good round coin which he could lay on the table for his amazed and happy family. These had been fine times, and they had never recurred, at least not with the same sense of glory, although later on Gregor had earned so much money that he was able to meet the expenses of the whole household and did so. They had simply got used to it. Both the family and Gregor, the money was gratefully accepted and gladly given, but there was no special uprush of warm feeling. With his sister alone had he remained intimate, and it was a secret plan of his that she, who loved music unlike himself, and could play movingly on the violin, should be sent next year to study at the conservatorium, despite the great expense that entailed, which must be made up in some other way. During his brief visits home, the conservatorium was often mentioned in the talks he had with his sister, but always merely as a beautiful dream which could never come true. And his parents discouraged even those innocent references to it. Yet, Gregor had made up his mind firmly about it and meant to announce the fact with due solemnity on Christmas Day.
Okay, so today,
Mhm.
please finish